Now we will invite all the panelists of the first session to come to the podium. Joining us are Mr. Steve Yates from the Heritage Foundation, Dset CEO Dr. Jeremy Zhang Zhicheng, Mr. Jimmy Goodrich from RAND Corporation, Dr. Suzuki Kazuto, Director at Institute of Geoeconomics, International House of Japan, Dr. Jong-min So, President of Korean Security Agency of Trade and Industry. For those who are maybe not that familiar with all the panelists, I suggest you to read the booklet now in your hand to learn from them before they speak. Now let's welcome the anticipated speech from the Honorable Steve Yates. Mr. Yates is a Senior Research Fellow for China and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. As a former Deputy National Security Advisor to the Vice President, Mr. Yates returns to Heritage after 2 decades as a practitioner of media and national security affairs. Let's give him a warm applause. Engaging.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to join you. 各位早上. It's wonderful to be in Taiwan. I will first begin with an apology because the topics that we are addressing are so big and so broad, I can't possibly do justice to them in just a few minutes. But I'm going to try to share with you some of the thinking that I see as driving the work that my friends and colleagues at the Heritage Foundation are doing, and that some of my friends and former colleagues in the Trump administration are working on. I will give the caveat that I don't speak for President Trump or the administration, so these are meant to be ideas to maybe drive some of the questions for our conversation, the thinking behind why big shifts appear to be happening now, and what we might do constructively together in response to this. It begins really with 3 bets that have been made over recent decades. One is a China bet. That was driven largely out of the Nixon-Kissinger era. It was driven by context at the time, but over time, it could be somewhat simplified to the notion that we wanted to open up our engagements with the People's Republic of China, that we would flow mass amounts of opportunity, technology, and funding into the People's Republic. Over time, that engagement might lead our differences to narrow, areas of cooperation to expand, and in doing so, China might grow out of its systemic problems, have reform, dare we say, maybe even become more like the rest of us. That was one bet, or maybe one way of defining a bet. Another bet came a few decades later, and I would consider it to be kind of the IT revolution bet. And that's when internet technology was driving a lot of what we thought in industry, government. We thought there might be an end of history, and technology was meant to be at the cutting edge of liberating humanity, and that it might be so diverse in its power and reach that authoritarian governments of the past would fail when met with the challenge of technology bringing opportunity and information to individuals all over the world at speed. And for a time, clearly there has been this positive benefit through the world, but at some point in time we began to also see, as has been the case in history, that the most advanced technologies may liberate humanity, or they may also be used to control humanity. And we have to be mindful of which side of that divide our decision-making is leading us towards. The third bet that I would put out there is somewhat similar to the China bet, and that is just the broad notion of globalization. That we had gone out of the Cold War that was seen as a bipolar competition in power structure into an era where national sovereignty, national divisions were reducing, and that we were going to enhance the role of global institutions to hopefully be a moderating force on non-status quo powers in the world so that it wouldn't be necessarily one nation versus another, but some kind of establishment of standards that might guide humanity in a direction toward peace and prosperity and maybe avoid the pitfalls of the Cold War or previous wars and other problems. And I would argue that while a lot of the world, and especially in our American media, the conversation is driven around the advent of the personality of Donald Trump, his 2 elections to the White House, these larger bets, I think, have been driving change where the policies we now deal with are a manifestation of a different assessment of where those drivers are going. One is an economic rebalancing. Broadly speaking, I won't have time to go into the tariff negotiations and all of that. But if you believe that globalization and moving toward global standards was going to be able to pace where the world was going, well, we have a difficulty that 25 years after China being in the World Trade Organization has bent more in the direction of China than China bending in the direction of the World Trade Organization. We have other institutions that have similarly been challenged, again, conspicuously by one power. The World Health Organization obviously was strained to the point of breaking because of the behavior of one power versus all others. And so the key question is, after we have arrived at a point where maybe faith has been lost in these globalized institutions, perhaps because of the role of one non-status quo power, where then do we go? When it comes to trade, there are going to be bilateral negotiations, but also some multilateral conversations. When it comes to the key questions for national government, I think that they'll flow into other areas of leadership. We have to ask, is what we're doing reducing the transfer of wealth, technology, and opportunity to those willing to use it against us? And if it's not doing that, then what can we do together to change that trend? Are we reducing dependency for strategic goods vital to our national security and resilience in a time of crisis? And if we're not taking that path to reduce dependency in strategic goods and define what those goods are, then we have homework to do among true friends and responsible partners. Is what we're doing enhancing independent and collaborative capabilities of our allies and partners? In other words, a new balance point to share risk and responsibility as we meet a challenge from those who are setting different standards and perhaps challenging our way of life. There's a lot that goes into this. And as I said, I can't possibly cover it in a limited period of time, but those are some of the core drivers of thinking behind what the new administration in Washington is trying to grapple with, and what other allies and partners are dealing with, as they may have similar assessments in some areas and not in others. But it really comes down to some other lessons learned structurally, and semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and other key leading technologies are at the intersection of some of these tensions. Where are standards set for the technologies that are defining our national security, but also the frontiers of our economic development? When it came to cellular technology, a lot of those standards were set at the UN level in a subordinate organization. In a post-globalism world, if that is where the United States and others may be, where do you then turn for core standard setting, transparency, and accountability among responsible stakeholders? It will not be sustainable if it's just each nation state unto itself. And so where then do we turn? I think that's an important question that should drive our thinking and conversation. When it comes to the stovepipes of the past, there's a very well-established pattern among semiconductor associations over a long period of time where there are somewhat stovepipes. And the Semiconductors Association of America or Taiwan or Japan or elsewhere, they might be just as sort of suspicious and competitive with each other as they were towards maybe the one of those associations that was not like the other. And when it comes to the horizons of supply chain resiliency, sustainability, is it possible for us to organize in those kinds of competitive stovepipes if one of the stovepipes is maximizing access and control over supply chains that are key to our thriving together outside of the China stovepipe? And I say this not to try to drive the conversation in the direction of how do we hurt China or hold China down. I may have my own opinion about that. Some of you may know what my opinion is about that. But really, I see this more of how do we, free, democratic societies, responsible stakeholders in the true sense, how do we drive the frontiers of technology, driving peace and prosperity and human dignity in the world, and have some degree of transparency and accountability in that project unless we work better together? And I would argue that maybe one of the structures is built on an idea of the G7 in times past, where you had the major leading free economies get together and talk about world affairs, setting standards and some forms of accountability among each other. Maybe there's a T7. I'm not wedded to that number, but it's a lucky number. And the T could also stand for Taiwan in case you like that. But there needs to be some kind of a structure that is a coalition of the willing that are truly responsible, but we're going to have to cross those stovepipes so that we're working supply chains for rare earths and other critical minerals, working on the design and manufacturing and distribution that any one of us cannot do to the maximum extent possible, and we can't meet the challenge of changing China's behavior, perhaps, to the better unless we more organize in this way and work together. So I hope these are fruitful ways of thinking and maybe some key questions that can drive our conversation among those who know the subject matter far deeper and better than I ever will. And so with that, I thank you for your attention and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Yates, for the insightful sharing. In the upcoming session, let's welcome Dset CEO Dr. Jeremy Zhang Zhichen as the moderator for Semiconductor Supply Chain Resilience Dialogue. Joining us are Mr. Jimmy Goodrich from RAND, Dr. Suzuki Kazuto, Director IOG, Dr. Zhongmin So, President of KOSTI. Please once again welcome the first panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, for the keynote speech. So good morning, everybody. I'm Jeremy Chan. I'm CEO of Dset. So serving as a moderator for this session is just kind of a very critical, very hard work for me. But because we have many things to discuss, so I would like to divide our agenda into two parts. The first round, I'll ask all of our panelists for sharing your point of view on especially addressing the challenges that we've been facing together or your country is facing. And the second round is mostly about the potential for collaborating with Taiwan. Okay, because, taking advantage of being moderator. So maybe from my point of view or from Taiwan's point of view, I'm going to share about how the stakeholders in this supply chain or in this island nations ecosystem see current challenges in terms of the global geopolitics perspective. So I think Taiwan has been long time serving as a B2B supplier ecosystem for many decades. But after we've been entering into the era of techno geopolitics and been entering into the era of AI, so everybody has started to see that Taiwan maintains the most critical supply chain for manufacturing the most critical part of the technologies that are serving for the future of AI. And we are facing the common challenge that we have to run faster than our adversary ideology because AI is really a potential power for totally reshift our future of way of life and even change the human civilization of the future. So Taiwan has been seen more and more critical and more strategical. And so from Taiwan's perspective, we always want to address that Taiwan's want to be a responsible and reliable partner for keeping manufacturing and supplying the most critical semiconductors, not only the advanced nodes for AI chips, but also the foundational chip, because the foundational chips is very critical as well, just as Minister Wu mentioned. So from this perspective, since we've been established by National Science and Technology Council, we've been working very hard from Taiwan to help our allies to address the issue and trying to detect where there is a loophole and how do we collaborate each other to tackle that kind of challenges. I'm going to show you some cases that our report mentioned. No, we don't have the cases. So we released some report. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So this is about the report we released last summer after we've been launched. This is about a remote poaching model. We really want to address that there is a network among Taiwan's trade and help the Chinese stakeholders to illegally circumvent the U.S. export control and still access to the Taiwan's capacity and Taiwan's supply of the semiconductor chips. And also, after that, in the beginning of this year, the next page, please, we released another report titled Uncovering Huawei's Shadow Network. So we really use a lot of OSINT, so that open source intelligence methodology to identify that Huawei has been created, many of the shadow networks, shell companies, and in order to circumvent the U.S. export control and Taiwan's export control. And so we want to address this issue to all of our allies to collaborate together in order to prevent from them to circumvent, our regulatory regimes again. And just to the next slide. Oh, I can control. Okay. And the recent report we just released last month jointly with Mr. Lin. I can see you there. Yeah. The Great Siege. So this is not only about the advanced node, but also we are covering the foundational chip or legacy chip. We have this report called the PRC's Comprehensive Strategy to Dominate the Foundational Chip. In this report, if you want to download it, you can just feel free to scan and also we have some copies that we can access to our website as well. In this report, we're trying to identify that China has been adopting a grand strategy and to create an ecosystem, and we're trying to identify this ecosystem as a pseudo-IDM. And you've been using this pseudo-IDM ecosystem, composing with end product suppliers and intermediate product suppliers to become to create the rest supply chain, and then they deny our access to their to our suppliers, and then dumping their goods to the Western world. So we propose the policy recommendation for all of our allies to jointly have more rigorous export control, and also we have to maybe brainstorming about a market denial strategy together to address these issues. So this is from my point of view. Then I'm going to give the floor for the next panelist, Professor Kazuto Suzuki from Japan. The Institute of Geoeconomics. And also I want to introduce, before I want to introduce Professor Suzuki, I just want to mention to you that Professor Suzuki just published your book in Mandarin Chinese 2 days ago, or yeah, and so you can purchase Professor Suzuki's books from Bokelai, and I'm not forcing all of you to buy, but I strongly recommend that you buy this book. Thanks, Professor Suzuki.
Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, for promoting my book, which was originally written in Japanese last year, but it was translated, and then it's available in the bookstore. So please take a look. So thank you very much, and I think, thank you very much for Dset to organize this wonderful conference, and I think this is an extremely important time to think of the strategic resilience and having this international collaboration for the semiconductor and all other strategically important goods, and especially, you know, the conflict and the pressure from China is now increasing. So I think this is extremely the moment that we need to think of the importance of this international alliance. So I am very glad to have this opportunity, and also working with Dset to make sure that, you know, Japan is a part of this this whole strategic alliance. The challenges on the semiconductor issue is that the semiconductor is deeply integrated in the global economy, and its supply chain and its division of labor is well established. And I think there are each countries, United States, Japan, Netherlands, South Korea, and Taiwan are working in collaboration with their own strength of the industrial and technological capabilities. And I think we need to maintain that in order to make sure that we have the maximum efficiency of the production. Meanwhile, we need to maintain this network in order to separate the market from China. And I think it is extremely important for Japan and the allies to have this evolution of the network. So I think the challenge is that we are now being in this we are in this network of the separation of the work, but when perhaps I think the experience in the COVID has made us understood that it is also vulnerable if we depend heavily on, you know, Taiwan alone. So I think this network should be evolutionize, and to make sure that we'll be able to establish a resilience of the supply by diversifying these production capabilities. So this is one of the reasons why the United States has invited the TSMC in Arizona, and Japan having the Kumamoto factory, and now Germany has the Germany is now planning to have another factory in Europe. So I think this is, on the one hand, to create a resilience of the supply of the semiconductors, but at the same time, I think it is to create the ecosystem in the different countries. So for Japan, the factory around Kumamoto is now becoming as the catalyst of creating the research institute on semiconductor, and also the suppliers from Japan and elsewhere are now working together to create an ecosystem. But this ecosystem in Kumamoto is not isolated from the ecosystem in Hsinchu. So I think the most important thing for Japan and the allies is to create this network of ecosystem, which means the human resources, the technology, the research, research facilities, and all work together to improve the quality of the product, as well as the producing the new material, new toolkits, new methods of production of the semiconductor. And I think this is now happening between Japan and the Taiwan and the Kumamoto. So I think this may extend to the United States and Europe to establish the democratic alliance of the supply chain network of the semiconductor. And I think this is also creating the distinguished market and the production capability from the Chinese producers. Because China, yes, they do have their own capabilities, own tools, and own equipment, but the key of the developing semiconductor system is this network. So I think the challenge is to have this network and provide enough resources to these each production site, and to have more coherent policies to coordinate this ecosystem of the semiconductor, and which eventually leads to much further development of the semiconductor manufacturing capability in each different actors. And I think this, perhaps in case of Japan, it will spread out to a company called Rapidus, or it can have an impact on South Korea in Samsung, or Intel in the United States. So there are these ecosystem is going to be the next challenges, and I think this network will have the much stronger resilience for us.
Thank you so much, Professor Suzuki. I especially love you use catalyst to describe the Kumamoto fab from TSMC there in Japan. Then I'm going to invite our next panelist, Dr. Jong-Min Soo from Republic of Korea, Korean Security Agency of Trade and Industry. We just signed MOU 2 days ago when you arrived here in Taiwan, and especially want to hear your perspective from South Korea.
Okay, first of all, it is really my honor to be invited in this wonderful the forum, and I thank you for the hosting this interesting occasion for Dset. So about the Korea's assessment of and response to supply chain resilience, especially in terms of the semiconductor, the challenges and risk, it can be broadly explained in two aspects, import side and export side. The first of all, for import side, the Korea focused on the supply chain resilience, in terms of supply chain, the stabilization, the perspective we kind of pursued. So we made a lot of effort, and those kind of efforts were codified into law in early the 2024, a little bit over the 1 year. And we established a set of the related law. We openly refer to as 3 supply chain, the acts. As the key element for them, the law includes the how to identify so-called economic security items. Definitely the semiconductor is included. And the other one is how to establish the early warning system to detect some risk in supply chain resilience, and establishing the high-level committee to coordinate the responses. And also to facilitate those kind of the action, so we created supply chain stabilization funds to support the private sector in case of disruptions. So it begins with the 5 trillion won in last year, but in this year we kind of increased them to the 10 trillion. Previously the 5 trillion, and this year the 10 trillion won in this year. But however, today's the supply chain resilience requires more than just the securing the inputs. So we need to stop the loopholes in export side as well. So like the circumvention or the leakage of sensitive goods or the technologies. To address this, the late last year, we also updated law on the prevention of the industrial technology leaks. So including the increasing penalties and the stronger protection of the technologies. So especially related to the institution, the KOSTI, together with the Korea Customs Service, the Korea established Customs Border Risk Management Center. So to monitor and to prevent circumvention and unauthorized the export. And based on your, in advance the questionnaire, so you asked me what is the kind of the expectation for our new government. So as you know, so the Lee Jae-myung administration inaugurated just 10 days ago. But because there were no transition period, policy details still in development. But I think the direction is clear related to supply chain resilience in terms of the supply, the semiconductor. Because the AI, including the semiconductor and economic security, is top priority to the new administration. So in Korea, in the presidential election, each party is required to submit their the policy pledge with priorities, so we can figure out which one is the first and which one is the kind of the last. And in the then presidential candidate, the Lee Jae-myung pledges, number one was AI-related policy, and the strengthening economic security was number 4 priority. So I can expect that the new administration will at least maintain and maybe and highly likely to build on existing the framework I explained it. And moreover, there is a broader bipartisan consensus on that the emerging technology is not just as an economic asset, but a strategic asset. Okay, thanks.
Yep, thanks so much, Dr. Saul. Thank you so much for bringing our newest information from the Korean new government. We are all very curious and interested about the future trend for the new government's process and policy on semiconductor resilience. And then I'm giving the microphone for Jimmy Goodrich from RAND Corporation. Jimmy has been supported us since we've been established 1.5 years ago, and as one of the most the largest supporter for Dset. So very welcome to welcome here you in Taiwan, and we're looking forward to listening to your perspective.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, and thank you for the invitation to come to Taiwan. I've been really impressed with the work that Dset has been doing in open source intelligence and really helping both Washington and the international community understand the different threats that different industries face from predatory activity from mainland China. So the research really is top quality, and I look forward to more of it. I'm always asking Jeremy, what's your next report, so I can read it. So stepping back a little bit, I think, why is it the question I've been asked, why is the U.S. government focused on the semiconductor problem and competition and securing its supply chains in partnership with allies and on its own? I think it's important to step back several years ago where the United States had really been taking, as we heard earlier, a relatively laissez-faire approach, letting the market guide how industries were evolving and developing, a period of rapid globalization. And in many ways, this made a lot of sense for business, for consumers, and economics as businesses moved to the lowest cost destination where the most efficient supply chains were located, whether it was here in Taiwan, which created tremendous value for the United States. The fabless semiconductor industry would not exist without the miracle of Taiwan's innovation, or in mainland China and other parts of the world. However, the big outlier that we also heard about has been mainland China, that through its state industrial policy approach, excess capacity, had created non-market competition, unlevel playing field. And whether it was flat panel display in Taiwan, shipbuilding in Japan and Korea, or the telecommunications industry in the United States, the U.S. really had just sort of watched as industry after industry had been wiped out and then taken over by subsidized national state-owned competition inside the PRC. But about 10 years ago, I was in the semiconductor industry, living in Washington, D.C., and one thing really changed was when mainland China decided that it would become, and declared openly, a global leader in the semiconductor industry by 2030. This really was a Sputnik moment for the United States, and it really was the first time that the U.S. organized an industrial policy response to try and maintain its leadership, slow down the advance of China's own indigenous semiconductor industry, and strengthen their supply chain partnerships with allies. This really was sort of the hill that the United States decided it was going to stand on and mount its first offense to protect itself from Chinese industrial policy. And it's really been remarkable to see that despite the political divisions in the United States on many, many issues, one thing they do agree is maintaining technological advantage for the United States and its allies, and both Democrats and Republicans, from the Obama, Trump 1 to Biden to now Trump 2, you see a consistent focus on ensuring that the semiconductor industry maintains its healthy operation and also increases its resilience. This really has led to a two-pronged strategic approach from the U.S., which is around a protect and promote strategy. Protect is ensuring that mainland China and other adversaries do not have access to the most advanced semiconductor chips. Also, the equipment used to produce the chips, increasingly broadening the small to a larger yard with a higher fence. As we have to remind ourselves that while semiconductors are commercial in nature, and they enable everything from innovations in healthcare, agriculture, to increasingly powering the AI economy, they also provide an opportunity for nations to modernize their military, conduct cyber operations, increase their intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance. And increasingly, if we think about the world of AI and AGI, it's a contest between democracies and authoritarian regimes to be able to set the standards so that technology can be a force for good, not for a force for malevolent purposes. And so there we've seen other efforts now also looking at mature node semiconductors. As during COVID-19, the world realized that the world doesn't just operate on advanced chips, but also the legacy chips that power everything that we need in our daily lives. And then on the promote side, the U.S. is now working very hard to rebuild its supply chains, as it really stood by during a multi-decade era of deindustrialization. And it wasn't for a lack of innovative companies, strong research universities. It was simply the U.S. placed a very strong bet on the free market and hoped that that would help sustain economic growth. However, that works 99% of the time, except when you have to realize that some markets globally are not free. One of them, for example, is the semiconductor industry, where there's not really a fab or a fabrication facility that doesn't somewhere benefit, whether it's in Singapore, Israel, Germany, from large government support. And so the United States has woken up now and realized that in order to be competitive globally, not to capture all production, but to be competitive and attract leading companies like TSMC, it has to offer something that makes it a competitive location. And that's really what's driving the CHIPS Act, but also research and development and investing in universities and research labs, developing a new national semiconductor technology center. All of this, I believe, has to be done in partnership with Taiwan, as Taiwan offers, whether it's innovative business models, supply chain cost down, innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I'm really, really excited to see TSMC expand in the United States, but also think about what powers here in Taiwan. Tens of billions of dollars of equipment from U.S. companies, leading U.S. research universities that are helping power innovation here. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship that we're working to strengthen. It's exciting also with Japan, Korea, a very strong player, and memory and other areas. So it's a global village, and we're all working together.
Thanks so much. Again, thanks so much, Jimmy. So because we are a little bit running out of the time, so I'm asking Steve if you want to respond to this session for like 3 minutes.
Well, I'm generally in violent agreement with everything that was said. I think that many of the other speakers did a better job than I in trying to address some of these issues, and I thank them for that. It seems to me that we remain in general consensus that the old Sesame Street lesson of one of these things is not like the other is what is driving how we have to think about the future. And it's not what our wish is for the direction China under Xi Jinping might go. It's the reality of where China under Xi Jinping is going. And so with that reality, we have some concern. We cannot say that the risk of a crisis of multiple different kinds is not possible. We cannot say that the government of China will not be involved in war in other parts of the world or otherwise. We've now learned by sad experience that this non-status quo behavior is happening. So we can dwell on the concern or we can dwell on the opportunity. And in aggregate, the world's leading high-tech manufacturing and export economies have a weight that surpasses what the People's Republic of China can bring to the world if we work in concert. That is the challenge. Human beings do that well sometimes, not at other times. But with leadership, commitment, partnerships, I think there's a hopeful vision of where this might grow and go. Ultimately, it's one of the lessons of the recent past where economic interests have to align with national security interests. Just like we saw in Europe, where the United States might have been concerned about increased dependency on the China market, while China was fueling a Russian invasion of Ukraine that was going on far too long. When we look in this theater, if we see one actor that is more likely than others to possibly provoke a crisis, what would we wish then we had done now to have the peaceful manufacturing base and supply chains so that we could surge to protect our own interests, our own people, but also the way of life that I think that we share that is more positive, more towards peace, prosperity, and human dignity by way of the best technology we can develop. That, I think, is the shared vision, and I just think that we've been blessed to hear multiple points of view from Korea, Japan, and the United States, and we're just grateful that our friends in Taiwan really are in the middle of this. This is really a miraculous island, and I think that we have great partnerships and opportunity ahead if we follow the Dset example of driving this conversation back in our own countries too.
Thanks so much, Steve. So this is our purpose because we want to bring everybody together here in Taiwan and discuss the matter. And then especially, the second round that we have to highlight the concrete opportunities for collaboration with Taiwan in strengthening resilience and advancing the semiconductor and technology sectors. So from my side, I'm just spending 3 minutes to share Taiwan's perspective when Jimmy mentioned about reindustrialization, when we mentioned about discussing about the reshoring. I think this is a kind of a common term from all like-minded countries from the United States, Japan, European countries that you really want to regain the capacity of manufacturing the advanced node of semiconductors. You really want to be reindustrialized. From our side, it's kind of, we use the term friendshoring or sharing. But when we're discussing about sharing, then how do we share and can achieve that kind of a win-win result? Yeah, and so there is a couple of the agenda that is necessary for us to discuss here, especially when we are talking about semiconductor supply chain. This is the one of the most capital-intensive industry. Maybe this is the most capital-intensive industry role. So we cannot only rely on the governmental subsidies to making sure that the industrial policy can succeed in the end of the day. And if we don't succeed, then the amount of the financial resources might be you just drop the resources into the water. So this is the consequence that we don't want to see in the future. So it's really urgent for us to discuss here how do we collaborate more and then to making sure that Taiwan and our ally can achieve a win-win scenario to help Japan, to help the United States to be reindustrialized, to have the capacity and working together to still dominate in the future of the semiconductor supply chain. And I think this is the key words among this process is about, again, efficiency and economic rationality. Because if we don't have a roadmap for achieving the efficiency or economic rationality, then maybe we never can, make sure that the new fabs located in our like-minded countries can sustain yourself. Because government subsidies never can, endure the burden, and government subsidies is not a sustained solutions for the industry to be reborn there in your homeland. So from our side, Taiwan is very positively to share this kind of resources. We're looking forward to more interdependent relations between us. We want to accelerate more and more exchange of the technology and also the brand circulation. But from your side, I really want to hear more from your perspective that how to collaborate with Taiwan. How do you put the agenda at this? How do you address this kind of agenda issue? And so again. Also, this turn, so I'm going to give the microphone to Dr. So.
Yeah, sure. So yesterday, Jeremy let me know the Korea became the Taiwan's largest trade deficit partner, surpassing the Japan recently. And I think that point is important. I mean, in terms that the trade deficit itself is a very neutral concept, as you know, and especially the advanced, the Asian, the economies like Korea, Taiwan, and Japan, because we trade mostly intermediate goods, and we're focusing on the intra-industry, the trade. So under such kind of the trade structure, trade deficit is not about the win or lose, but it reflects only how independent our two economies are. So we have the lots of common, both Korea and the Taiwan. So we are the small and open economy, the export-driven, and heavily dependent on semiconductor, especially. And Korea is the semiconductors makes up the 20% of the total export, mainly on the memory chips, and Taiwan does the semiconductors 35% of export focus on the logic chips, mainly led by the TSMC. And one slight difference is that Korea has a relatively the more diversified the export base, including automobile, shipbuilding, chemicals, like that. And each side can contribute the unique strengths to, especially for the semiconductor, the chip, the value chain. And there are already several good examples, and maybe more. For example, the SK Hynix, it has the cutting-edge HBM the technology, and TSMC with the world-class foundry and the packaging capabilities. So they are already working together with companies like the NVIDIA to develop next-generation AI chips. And I want to stress on kind of another area we can kind of develop based on the semiconductor chip cooperation. which is that the AI chip applications, the AI chip application are expanding across the sector, and as I mentioned, Korea has the range of the manufacturing base, automotive, robotics, shipbuildings, etc. And in addition to chips, the data is, I believe, indispensable for the advancement of AI industry, and manufacturing is another area that can generate real-world data. So data, chips, and models in manufacturing can reinforce each other. So deeper, the Taiwan cooperation enable us to better align advanced chip technology with industrial need, and it will deliver greater impact across the industries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor So. And then I'll have the microphone for Dr. Suzuki to share the perspective from Japan.
Right. Thank you very much. So let me just start from our already built-in experience in Kumamoto. I think we have a very successful collaboration with Taiwan in Kumamoto, but there are certain problems. One, well, of course, as I mentioned, the lack of the ecosystem, although it started building now, there are some problems of increasing prices, housing prices, or the prices of the food. These are the things that happens when you have the a big corporation like TSMC comes to a local regional town. So these are the kind of things. But I think we need to be prepared to do more, not just about the technology, but or the capital cooperation, but also the how to accept and how much we will be able to expand our capabilities of accepting these very industrial capable companies. And also, I think there needs to be some sort of a experience that we had from a TSMC side. One of which is that TSMC, the workers of the TSMC asking Japanese workers to work like Taiwanese, and I think that's a little tough ask. I mean,
Americans.
Yes. So I think there are different labor laws and different working cultures. So yeah, I think we can't really respond to the request from a factory for 24/7. So these are the kind of things that we need to adjust for the future. So that's one thing. Okay, so but on a serious note, I think Japan and Taiwan can collaborate more by exchanging these communications, because on the one hand, yes, Taiwan is a largest customer, one of the largest customers of the Japanese semiconductor manufacturing equipment, and there are constant communications between the industries, but when it comes to the question of the research and development for these equipments, they still, I think, again, stretching the discussion on the ecosystem, I think we need to involve more stakeholders to build these new technologies, new machineries for improving the efficiencies of the production. So this is one thing that we can do together with expertise in Taiwan and expertise in Japan. So this kind of technological cooperation will be an extremely important element. The other point that Japan and Taiwan can do is that we do have this new research institute together with the Advanced Institute of Science and Technology called ICE and TSMC, having the research laboratory for the 3D 3D chip building for the future. So physically the chips are now coming down to the 1 nanometer level, 1 nanometer node level, and probably this is coming to the sort of a limit of the physical 2D chips. So the 3D chips is going to be the future of the for the logic chips. And I think this ICE and TSMC collaboration is a harbinger of creating the new technologies for the 3D chips. And also we are now working with the chiplet that the universities in Japan, TSMC, and the Samsung actually working together in Japan to collaborate to have the logic chip and the memory chip in the one component. So that this is the most, this is going to be the chip of the future. The chiplet will be contributing for developing the edge computing. So these are the new technologies that we are working together. So there are a lot of technologies in the horizon, and for the much more efficient AI, edge computing, we need to work together because we have a different expertise, and these different expertise need to be coordinated and produce the new technologies. So I think the future is wide open.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Suzuki. And just saw the news release by TSMC 2 days ago that they are going to launch a new joint research center in your university, University of Tokyo. Yeah, so really looking forward to further collaboration with our Japanese partners. So then, Jimmy, that floor is yours.
Well, great. So I think roughly when I consider partnership with the United States and Taiwan and semiconductors, it's really in 4 main areas. One is in security, the second is in innovation, third is in resilience, and fourth would be a global network of allied United Nations. On the security side, obviously, Taiwan is the hub for contract semiconductor manufacturing. And so there's a lot that the United States and Taiwan can do together to ensure that adversarial nations, bad actors, military entities that are, as you've identified, going through cutout companies don't access the advanced node processes that they're not permitted to. We do not want to see a repeat of what happened last year with Huawei and, as we know, the contract foundry here in Taiwan. I think there's been a lot of effort and dialogue between the US and Taiwan and companies to improve that. There's probably more that the US and Taiwan can do to not just screen the foundries, but also foundry service providers, OSATs, to ensure that they're producing for who they're supposed to be producing. The second in the security front is on legacy semiconductors. I think there's been a lot of research and focus on the competitive threat that mature node foundry and fabless companies face from the massive buildup of capacity in the PRC. This also is a challenge for companies in the US. We've read that Wolfspeed, for example, silicon carbide supplier, is potentially going into insolvency. In NXP in the Netherlands is laying off thousands of workers and shutting factories. Taiwanese mature node foundries as well are facing competitive pricing threat from mainland Chinese foundries. So I think this is an area for active collaboration between the US and Taiwan. I think we also need to recognize that the mature node production surge in mainland China is not an economic issue. It is a national security issue. As mainland China is seeking to build a fortress economy, whether it's in energy, food, stockpiling, emergency preparedness, they're preparing for extreme situations. And those extreme situations require a massive urgent buildup within China. And the semiconductor massive production surge is to be able to support the country so that if they have to close the border and produce domestically, they'll have enough to be able to sustain their economy. So we have to understand that the PRC is engaging in a mature node strategy to prepare for an extreme situation. And we have to respond accordingly, recognizing that it's not just a market challenge, but it is an indicator of China's potential future activity. On the innovation side, I think we really need to work with Taiwan and the United States and Japan and Korea to out-innovate and collaborate in next-generation research on advanced process technology, new materials, architecture, software. The United States is now investing over $10 billion in public money into new semiconductor research programs. Those should be open for leading companies and universities in Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Europe to work collaboratively so that we can all collectively stay at the forefront. Whether it's moving to glass substrates or new wafer scale packaging, these we can do together collectively so that we can stay ahead in advanced and mature node semiconductors. On the partnership side, I'm really excited around the recommendation from your president to create a democratic alliance of semiconductor countries. I think this is a great idea. I think it's an area where hopefully the United States government is going to be interested in having discussions with Taiwan. We also need to recognize that there are some countries that probably should not be part of that club. This is a challenging era where even non-traditional countries now, like in the Middle East, are very strong ambitions to become, frankly, the next Taiwan. They don't share our democratic values. They have close relationships with mainland China, but they have massive sovereign wealth that can enable them to buy their way into the industry. You're seeing now the United States take a very careful approach towards how they're engaging the Middle East, and I think we all know that they also have engaged Taiwan. And so this is an area where the US and Taiwan can work together to ensure that while they're allowing their companies to be able to compete globally, they can also ensure that our democratic and national security interests are aligned. And I think the Middle East is also an area, again, where we can partner to ensure the rules of the road are set correctly.
Jimmy, thank you so much to address these critical issues, and also thank you so much for readdress the issue that we cover in our foundational chip report. Then Steve, also you are in charge of respond to our discussions for 3 minutes.
Well, just building on what has been said, I think it's a critical opportunity, but really a requirement of our time to figure out how we cooperate with Taiwan, but also cooperate among all of our responsible parties. And what do we cooperate to do? There's an endless list, but I'll focus on basically 3 areas. One is energy, the other is critical minerals, and the other is capital. And they're related. If we're going to have a success in being the leading manufacturers, developers, deployers of the best technology in the world, we have to have abundant, affordable, and resilient supplies of energy. And we need to work together on what those sources of energy might be. And that could come in the development of small modular reactors and advanced nuclear that's more responsible and recyclable. It can come in liquid natural gas and other kinds of supplies coming from elsewhere, but all of it comes at the cost of capital and the need for infrastructure. China doesn't have the problem of a private sector, public sector divide. They can act in concert and not at market prices. How do we work together to make sure that private sector developers have access to sufficient capital to be able to secure the supplies of the energy that we need in a resilient, perhaps shared ecosystem? Alaska has been talked about with regard to Taiwan. We have an amazing, charismatic, and very tall governor of Alaska who has been to Taiwan, and you've had leaders go to Alaska. It will take capital and cooperation, I think, among all of our countries in order to bring those resources to market in a way that can be a resilient supply for what is being done in this part of the world and in the United States generally. On the critical minerals, what are we doing together to try to compete with the sources of those supplies that China has been going to? When I visited Argentina earlier this year, I think there were 5 to 7 lithium mines that China had gone to and basically secured access to on the eastern side of the Andes Mountains. Well, it's going to take infrastructure to bring that stuff to market, but what are we doing as Japan, Korea, the United States, and Taiwan to together bring the capital to play to be able to secure the mining deals and have the infrastructure that the host country is not in a position to finance themselves? In many ways, we finance the infrastructure for the China economic miracle with the multilateral development lending and other kinds of investment. What are we doing together to finance the pivot to a new future together in this regard? And that capital, minerals, and energy, I think, are critical areas of cooperation for us.
And on that energy, I think, just to add 30-second point, I think while everyone in Japan, the United States, Germany, Korea is tremendously grateful for all the investment that Taiwanese companies are making in our countries, we have a responsibility as well to help Taiwan boost its own resilience. And if we can collectively boost Taiwan's energy reserves, diversification of energy sources, alternative energy, delivery production networks, a more secure cyber grid, that we all benefit from a more secure Taiwan, particularly in the semiconductor space. So, this is something that I also promote significantly back in Washington.
Yeah, thanks so much, both Steve and Jimmy, to address this issue. I totally agree that energy resilience is one of the most critical foundation for supply chain resilience. Do we still have a time for Q&A session?
Now we're open to the floor to the audience. Due to the time restraint, please identify your name, affiliation, keep the question short within 13 seconds, try your best. Kindly indicate which speaker your question is directed to. And we collect 2 questions for this round.
Dr. Song from Perspective Foundation.
Drawing from your experience from on the stage, what's the policy tools that you find most effective to coordinate or nudge or provide incentives for the private sector actors? Please, thank you.
Mr. Huang from Capri.
Thank you. This is Sui Huang from the Center for Asia Pacific Resilience and Innovation, Capri. I have a question for Mr. Yates. I think one of the important things that you mentioned is that the current competition between free society and the non-free society is kind of like competition between who can innovate more, who can bring more innovative ecosystem to bring prosperity and to get more frontier, like innovative technology. So what do you think how free societies like Taiwan, US, Japan, and South Korea, they could collaborate institutionally more to build this ecosystem that can ensure the creativity and innovation in the long run, rather than fighting the tariffs and short-term interest in the short run? Thank you.
May we have the speakers to answer the first round of the questions?
Steve, because everybody points to you. So.
Get the hard one.
Well, I honestly believe that everyone else on the platform could address these questions perhaps even better than I would. I would just offer a down payment on this. And this is a conversation that we should continue on an ongoing basis. In terms of the public-private access to capital, I think it's just very, very important that each of our governments, the elected top leaders, are effectively engaging the corporate leaders in industry in a two-way conversation. And as they do that, we need to make sure that our leaders in government and industry are working also across our alliances to have that conversation. With Taiwan, we have the challenge that in our infinite wisdom, we have chosen not to have our presidents and prime ministers meet publicly with yours. Maybe someday that can be resolved, but it's not today. But we need to have those kinds of conversations to drive where leadership is putting investment. When it comes to the conversation among the free societies, really I would just refer back to what we had talked about earlier. I think we're at the front end of trying to be more effective in trying to drive these conversations. I'm not sure what the grouping really needs to be. I made a joke, but not a complete joke, about a T7 playing off the G7. APEC was created for a particular purpose. The key in these areas is that they were not subordinate to or controlled controlled by the corruption or manipulation of the United Nations. These are outside of those structures for specific purposes. And so I have an open mind and would welcome what other people's creative inputs are for what the vessel is for the conversation to come. But it has to be national leaders and industry leaders together. Otherwise, it's not going to meet that challenge of sort of the hybrid warfare of the PRC.
May we have another round of 2 questions for other important panelists?
Thank you. I'm Alexander Schoberg. I'm a Danish journalist with Berlingske. I'm wondering how committed you would say the U.S. government, the current government, is to investing outside the U.S. Because this lies at the very core of your proposition, that it goes both ways. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dimitri. I work for a local TV station, TVBS News. Mr. Goodrich, you mentioned this diplomatic chip alliance that the president proposed a couple of days ago. How confident are you that when it comes to energy, we can differentiate between countries that are not so democratic? Taiwan's energy supply comes from countries in the Middle East, which have a different definition of democracy. So when it comes to energy, how do you include this variable in the definition of a chip alliance?
May I invite 3 of the panelists to respond to 2 of the questions, in each one in 1 minute.
Maybe Jimmy, you want to take a question first?
Yeah. I mean, I think actually the United States is very open to investment, outbound investment. For example, if you look in Taiwan, some of the largest investors are U.S. Micron has multiple different front-end and back-end manufacturing sites. They recently announced a new high-bandwidth memory project here. Corning Glass has major investments in Taiwan. Even in South Korea, for example, Lam Research, KLA are expanding their investments in the country. In Japan, you have Micron, again, in the semiconductor space. So, you know, I think we're going to continue to see investment in the U.S. and abroad. I think the U.S. recognizes that we can't produce everything, even if that's what we want. That's what politicians might say, but then reality is that we have to have a global, an open-minded economy. On the Democratic Alliance, I think what I was referring to is the semiconductor side of things. We were maybe in a convenient position where if you look at the semiconductor ecosystem, it's actually, with the exception of China, uniquely, particularly on the advanced side, almost entirely in democratic, free, and open societies. And so my hope is that we're able to keep it that way for at least the advanced node chip design, research, and manufacturing. On the energy, we just really don't, in the short term, have any really alternative. And so we just have to manage that situation, knowing that you know, we need to innovate towards you know, new alternative sources of energy, whether it's small modular reactor fusion down the road. That's an opportunity for, you know, the Western free societies to create new sources of energy, and obviously LNG in the United States is a massive opportunity.
So maybe Steve, you want to take a? Okay, yeah, sure.
Maybe Dr. Suzuki to respond to the last 2 questions. Any thoughts from Japanese side?
Of course, I'm not speaking on behalf of the American government or American position. So
Definitely, sure.
Just touching upon this energy democracy, autocracy issue. I mean, the energy and the natural resources are unequally distributed. So there is no options that, you know, we use the, you know, oil from the Middle East, gas from Russia. You know, there are no alternatives. Therefore, we need to have a reusable energy and invest in it. The point that I also you know, concur with Jimmy, that the most important thing is the value. And when we develop our AI platforms and the semiconductor which supports the AI platform, this is where these differences of value reflects. And I think we need to build a more resilient, democratic, coherent alliance in order to protect these values within, to spread the AI together with the values and try to prevent the sort of a malicious ideas spread around all over the world based on, throughout these vehicles of AI platforms. So this is where we need to think about it. And then in order to do so, we need to have the resilient supply chain network on the democratic side on the semiconductor. That's probably the most important point.
Last but not least, we can invite Dr. Su from KOSTI. Can we have your thoughts on that?
Okay, let me be very brief because we already the last of the behind the schedule. So in Korea, as I introduced, so we the new administration they announced their pledges by rank, and the top 10 was about the energy resilience. So I think it can be a kind of the part of the answer. Thank you.
Thank you all for your valuable comments. Given the time constraint, we won't able to take another round of questions. Please join me to give a round of applause to our speakers. We will now have a 10 minutes break. Please come back to the venue after 10 minutes. Thank you.